Ideology: a part of doctrine, myths, or belief that guides individual, social movement, institution, class or large group happens all around the world. With people disagreeing on how the country is structured, they stand up against the government and fight for the change, bringing a huge change to a nation when successfully ran. In order for an ideology to be accepted in one country, majority of people has to be attracted to a new idea that people believe is new and is the best way to change the world, and support them thoroughly. In that sense, ideologies gain popularity because people see something that they disagree with and find a new way to change it through the ideology. There are three significant ideologies we feel as though fall under this season, which are communism, fascism, and modernism.
Okay, now for some examples on how these ideologies can be put into practice.
Contrary to communism, fascism was a whole different ideology with new rules and beliefs, and yet surprisingly, it managed to gain just as much popularity in history. Hitler's Nazi regime is one infamous example. Fascism is an ideology that believes in putting the country first in every aspect. Its values and rules work towards the benefit of the nation as a whole rather than the individual people. Fascists were against communism and accepted inequality in the country as a natural thing. They were led by a dictator who supervised the entire state by suppressing criticism and opposition through propaganda and by other means. The ideology first came into use in 1922 when the Italian dictator Benito Mussolini captured the minds and hearts of the people who were desperate to see a stronger Italy.
Un'ora segnata dal destino batte il cielo della nostra patria.
Right after the World War, Italy's economy was in a dire state, and the ineffective government could not do a single thing about it. To add to that, Italy's efforts in the war were completely wasted as they did not gain any of the land they had hoped to receive. With debts piling up and unemployment on the rise, people rallied for immediate change. It's not difficult to see how an ideology promising economic and political improvements gained immense popularity. Mussolini also promised to regain the land Italy deserved after World War I. All these plans and promises contributed to the tipping point of fascism. This further proves our thesis of how ideologies gain popularity through the people's desire to change the things that they view as problems in their countries.
Now we'll be moving on to modernism. Modernism is an ideology in which we believe in today. The ideology started to spark up during the 1890s when Charles Darwin introduced his theory of evolution to the Victorian era. During this period, people considered things very black and white. They thought very high of religious beliefs, and no one during the Victorian era questioned authority. However, after the introduction of the theory, people began to change their ways of thinking bit by bit, from objective thinking into more subjective, curious ways of thinking. The ideology then gradually gained popularity as Einstein's theory of relativism was introduced. The two world wars also had massive impact to the idea of modernism, due to the fact that people began to question their actions of fighting and express their own emotions. Therefore, when we look at paintings today in comparison to Victorian ages, the paintings are more vague and surreal today, whilst during the Victorian era, it is more clear and realistic. Due to modernism, we have so many different things compared to back then. We now have Dada art, we learn about science and how everything works. We now, as modernism implies, live in a modern world.
An ideology that is somewhat on its way to gaining popularity in the future is called the Go Green movement. In the late 1900s, the Go Green ideology received quite a fame, and the public were persuaded by the new environmental thinking about the world in some degrees. However, we are all aware that it lost its reputation since then. This ideology is yet to become a powerful one like the other three mentioned. In order for it to retrieve its fame, it needs to reconsider their tipping points or the stepping stones to gaining popularity. The history of Go Green could be traced back to during the early 1900s when an environmental-based book, Silent Spring by Rachel Carson was published. The popularity then increased during the time of Theodore Roosevelt. Its belief was to protect the natural environment and to reverse the effects of global warming for the future generation. One of the main reasons why Roosevelt decided to change the environment was because of the rapid spread of diseases such as cholera and typhoid due to polluted conditions of water. It acquired a number of popularity. According to data, 55% of the US workers are now go-greeners. However, this ideology disappeared after a while. Why did this occur? The reason why go-green ideology wasn't as successful was because it didn't have the problems that people disagree with. In other words, it lacked the massive problem that every citizen had experience of. Yes, there were issues regarding the pollution, however, not every single citizen experienced those traumatic problems. This is proven that only 50% of the citizens in America have experienced or is concerned about the pollution. Without a tipping point, there cannot be a new ideology in action. Without the common problem that everyone faces, there cannot be a start to an ideology. This is why the Go Green lost its popularity.
In conclusion, it is important to understand that ideology gained power through synthesizing people's mind and moving that into an action that everyone can participate in, such as communism, fascism, modernism, and furthermore, Go Green movement that is happening even right now. The world is inevitable with going through changes, and with a bright ideology, the world is going to be leading up to a better place. In order for an ideology to become a success, it has to gain a huge popularity through people seeing something they disagree with and find a new way to change it through an ideology, so that more and more people are going to be involved in it. From then, a success of ideology is guaranteed.